I lay in bed at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday night, my room illuminated only by the soft blue glow of my phone screen. Emma's face filled the display, her green eyes sparkling even through the pixelated video connection. We'd been talking for 3 hours straight, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this happy. She was telling me about her day, about the drama in her friend group, about the college she wanted to attend, and I was hanging on every single word like it was the most important thing I'd ever heard. So then Jessica literally just walked away in the middle of our conversation. Emma was saying, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear, "Can you believe that? Like, who does that?" I was about to respond when my bedroom door suddenly flew open without any warning whatsoever. No knock, no announcement, just the door slamming against the wall with a bang that made my heart jump into my throat. Mom burst into my room like a SWAT team executing a raid, her face twisted in anger and disappointment. She caught me mid-conversation, phone in hand, Emma's confused and startled face glowing on my screen in the darkness of my room. For a split second, nobody moved. Emma's mouth was open mid-sentence, frozen in confusion. I could see her trying to process what was happening. "Are you serious right now?" Mom shrieked, her voice hitting that particular pitch that made my teeth hurt. She crossed the room in 3 long strides and snatched my phone directly from my hands before I could even react. Emma's face disappeared into blackness as Mom pressed the power button, ending the call without explanation or apology. "Mom, what are you doing?" I protested, reaching for my phone. "We were just talking. This is completely inappropriate behavior." "Marcus," she snapped, holding my phone high above her head like I was a toddler reaching for a toy. "It's a school night, and you have classes tomorrow. What could you possibly need to discuss with some girl at 1 o'clock in the morning?" Dad appeared behind her in the doorway, wearing his old college t-shirt and plaid pajama pants, shaking his head slowly like I'd just committed some terrible, unforgivable crime. His arms were crossed over his chest in that particular way that meant he was backing up whatever Mom was about to say, no questions asked. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" Dad asked, his voice low and measured in that disappointed father tone that somehow felt worse than yelling. This is absolutely unacceptable. They didn't care that I finally had a real chance with my crush. They didn't care that Emma was the most amazing girl who'd ever shown interest in me. They didn't care that these late-night calls were the only thing keeping her interested in me. The only time we could really talk without the chaos of school and friends and everything else getting in the way. They didn't care about any of that. "You're 16 years old, Marcus," Dad said firmly, stepping into my room and flipping on the overhead light. I squinted against the sudden brightness. "You don't need to be talking to girls at all hours of the night. You need to be sleeping. You need to be focused on your education and your future, not staying up until dawn chatting with some girlfriend." "She's not just some girlfriend." I protested weakly, but I already knew it was pointless. When my parents made up their minds about something, that was it. Discussion over. Case closed. "We'll talk about this in the morning," Mom said, her voice slightly calmer now, but still edged with anger. "Right now, you're going to bed, and we're going to have a serious conversation about boundaries and appropriate behavior." They left my room, taking my phone with them, and I heard them talking in hushed, urgent voices in the hallway. I caught fragments of their conversation. Too much freedom. Losing control. Needs structure. What if she's a bad influence? I lay back down in my now silent room, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to my ceiling when I was 12. My phone was gone. Emma probably thought I'd just hung up on her. She was probably confused, maybe hurt, definitely wondering what the hell had just happened. I grabbed my laptop from my desk, thinking I could at least message her and explain, but Mom came back in 5 minutes later and took that too. "Nice try," she said. "Good night, Marcus." The next morning at breakfast was excruciating. Dad had printed out a literal contract. He'd typed it up on his computer, printed it on official-looking paper, and slid it across the kitchen table to me while I was eating my cereal. "What is this?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling in my stomach. "New house rules," Dad said, sipping his coffee. "Effective immediately." I read through the document with growing horror. It was absolutely insane. Complete device lockdown after 9 p.m. every single night, no exceptions. My phone would be physically carried to their bedroom like I was a child who couldn't be trusted. The Wi-Fi router would be programmed to cut my connection at curfew, blocking my devices specifically. Even my laptop would be confiscated and hidden away each night, just in case I got creative and try to find workarounds. "You can't be serious," I said, looking up at them. "This is crazy. I'm 16, not 6. You lost our trust," Mom said simply, spreading jam on her toast. "This is how you earn it back. By following rules. By showing us you could be responsible." "I was just talking to my girlfriend." At 1 in the morning on a school night, Dad countered. "That's not responsible behavior. Marcus, that's the behavior of someone who doesn't understand priorities." After breakfast, Mom pulled out her phone and showed me the app she'd installed. Some invasive parental control software that would send send her instant alerts if I so much as touched any device after curfew. She demonstrated it proudly, like she was showing off photos of a vacation. See, it'll notify me immediately if you try to access anything. I'll know within seconds. This is a violation of my privacy, I argued, but even as I said it, I knew it sounded childish and pointless. You don't have privacy when you violate our rules, Mom said firmly. Privacy is a privilege, not a right. You'll understand when you're a parent. She kept repeating the phrase healthy boundaries like it was some kind of magic spell that justified everything. She showed me some ridiculous article about teenage sleep patterns she'd found on Facebook, written by some doctor I'd never heard of, filled with statistics about how teenagers need 9 hours of sleep and how blue light from screens disrupts circadian rhythms. This is for your own good, she insisted. You'll thank us later. I went to school that day feeling like a zombie. Not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of knowing I couldn't talk to Emma. I couldn't explain what happened. I couldn't tell her it wasn't her fault. During lunch, she found me in my locker. What happened last night? She asked, her voice a mixture of concern and hurt. Did I do something wrong? Did your parents freak out? They completely lost it, I explained, keeping my voice low so other students wouldn't hear. They took my phone. They took everything. I can't call you anymore. Not after 9, anyway. Emma's face fell. So we can't talk at night anymore. I guess not, I said miserably. Unless I figure something out. She nodded slowly, and I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Okay, well, I guess we'll just talk during the day then. But I could hear it in her voice. The distance. The pulling away. Emma wasn't the type of girl who'd wait around for a guy who couldn't even call her. She had options. Plenty of them. That first night, without talking to Emma, was absolute torture. I lay there in my bed, staring at the ceiling for hours, my mind racing with anxious thoughts. Was she thinking about me? Was she angry? Did she think I was ignoring her on purpose? Was she talking to some other guy right now? Someone whose parents weren't completely insane? My parents made 3 separate checks that night. First at 9:30, right after curfew. Mom opened my door quietly, peeked in, saw me lying in bed with a book, and nodded approvingly before closing the door. Then at 10:45, Dad did the same thing. And finally, at 11:30, Mom came back one more time just to make absolutely sure I was in bed, sleeping, deviceless, and completely alone. I heard her footsteps pause outside my door. I heard the handle turn slowly. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe evenly, like I was actually asleep. She stood there for what felt like an eternity before finally closing the door again. The second night was even worse. Emma had texted me 17 times during school, and I'd read them all during lunch when I still had my phone. Each message was more worried than the last. Hey, are you okay? Marcus, please talk to me. Did I do something wrong? Are we breaking up? I'm really worried about you. Please just let me know you're alive. My chest felt tight with anxiety. My hands were shaking as I typed back quick responses between classes, trying to explain the situation, try to reassure her that everything was fine, that I still wanted to be with her, that my parents were just being unreasonable. But I could feel her slipping away with each message. The enthusiasm was gone. The playfulness we'd had was replaced with something careful and distant. That night, lying in bed after my parents had confiscated my phone again, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to her. I needed to fix this before I lost her completely. Then I remembered something that made my heart race with possibility. My old iPhone was buried somewhere in my closet. The one I'd used before my parents upgraded me last year. Cracked screen, terrible battery life, barely functional camera, but it might still work. It had been sitting in a shoebox under a pile of old clothes for months. After my parents' routine 9:30 check, I waited. I watched the clock on my wall, counting down the minutes. 9:45, 10 o'clock, 10:15. I wanted to be absolutely safe to make sure they were settled in for the night, probably watching their shows in their bedroom. Then I quietly slipped out of bed and opened my closet door as slowly as possible, wincing at every tiny creak. I dug through the pile of old clothes, my hands searching in the darkness, until finally my fingers closed around the familiar shape of the shoebox. I pulled out the hidden phone with trembling hands. The screen was badly cracked, spiderwebbing across the entire display. But when I pressed the power button, it lit up. The battery was at 23%, but it was enough. I had forgotten to remove it from my family's phone plan, which meant it still had service. I opened a video chat app and called Emma. She answered on the second ring, her face appearing on the damaged screen, pixelated and laggy, but she was smiling. That beautiful smile that made my stomach flip. Oh my God, she whispered, her eyes wide. I thought your parents actually killed you or something. How are you calling me right now? Old phone, I whispered back, keeping my voice as low as possible. Found in my closet. They don't know about it. You're such a rebel, she teased. And I had to bite my tongue hard not to laugh out loud and give myself away. We talked for an hour that night, both of us whispering, both of us giddy with the thrill of breaking the rules. It felt like we were partners in crime, like we were in some kind of romantic movie where the lovers had how to hide their relationship from disapproving parents. Over the next few weeks, we developed an elaborate system based on my parents' predictable habits. I learned their patterns like I was studying for a test. Mom always did random checks throughout the night, but they followed a pattern. She'd check at 9:30, then usually around 10:30 or 11 o'clock, and then one final time around midnight before she went to sleep. I became a master of deception. I could hear the specific creak of the third stair from the top, the one that always groaned underweight. The moment I heard that sound, I know Mom was coming. I'd whisper urgently to Emma, "She's coming," and we'd execute our plan. Screen off immediately. Phone shoved deep under my pillow, buried so far down that even if she lifted the corner, she wouldn't feel it. Eyes closed tight, every facial muscle carefully controlled to look peaceful and relaxed. Breathing slow and deep, the way people breathe when they're actually in deep sleep. The hardest part was when Mom would just stand there in my doorway, staring at me suspiciously. I could feel her eyes on me, studying me, looking for any sign that I was faking. Sometimes she'd stand there for a full minute, maybe longer. My heart would be pounding so hard I was certain she could hear it, certain she could see my chest rising and falling too quickly. Once, she even walked over and stood directly above my bed. I felt her shadow fall across my face. I heard her breathing. I could smell her lavender lotion. She stood there, and I had to stay completely motionless, fighting every instinct to open my eyes, to swallow, to move even a fraction of an inch. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she turned and left, closing the door softly behind her. "That was so close," Emma whispered when I pulled the phone back out. I was holding my breath the entire time. Me too. I admitted, my hands still shaking with adrenaline. This went on for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of secret phone calls, of whispered conversations, of elaborate deceptions. Emma and I grew closer than ever. There was something about the secrecy that made everything feel more intense, more important. We were Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers kept apart by unreasonable parents. Then one night, about a month into our secret calls, Emma said something that made me pause. "Babe, are you okay?" she asked, her pixelated face showing concern. "You keep coughing." I hadn't even noticed I was doing it, but she was absolutely right. My throat felt scratchy and irritated, like I'd been breathing in dust or something. "I don't know," I whispered. "Maybe I'm getting sick." "Maybe you should get some water," she suggested softly. "You sound really rough." But as I sat up in bed, I smelled it. Something sharp and chemical cutting through my room like a knife. It wasn't the normal smell of my room. It was wrong. Dangerous. My brain took a second to process what I was smelling, and then ice-cold fear flooded through my entire body. "Smoke." "Wait," I whispered urgently, standing up quickly. "Something's wrong." "What?" Emma asked, her voice rising slightly. "Marcus, what's happening?" I walked to my bedroom door and opened it slowly. The hallway was filled with gray smoke, flowing like a river along the ceiling, getting thicker by the second. It was pouring from downstairs, from the direction of the kitchen, rolling up the staircase in waves. "Oh my God!" I breathed, my voice shaking. "Emma, I have to go. The house is on fire." "What?" she screamed, loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Marcus, get out. Get out right now." I shoved the phone in my pajama pocket and ran down the hallway to my parents' bedroom. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. I burst into their room and ran to Dad's side of the bed, shaking him hard. Dad, wake up. The house is on fire." He woke up jerky and disoriented, swatting at my hands. "Marcus?" "What?" "Buddy, if this is about your phone privileges, we can talk in the morning." "Dad," I shouted, not caring anymore if I got in trouble. "There's smoke everywhere. The house is burning. We need to get out right now." The urgency in my voice must have cut through his sleep fog because his eyes suddenly went wide. He sat up quickly, and that's when the acrid smell hit him. His face went pale. Mom shot up instantly, coughing. "What's that smell?" "Fire," Dad said, jumping out of bed. "The house is on fire." We ran into the hallway, and the smoke was so much thicker now, dark and suffocating. I could barely see 3 feet in front of me. Mom screamed when she saw the orange glow coming from downstairs. Flames were licking up the walls of the staircase, spreading impossibly fast, consuming everything they touched. "We need to get out," Dad yelled. "Now, right now." Mom ran back into their bedroom and grabbed Buster, our terrified golden retriever, who was barking frantically. Dad frantically patted his pockets, looking for his phone. "Where's my phone? I need to call 911. There's no time," I shouted. "We have to go." The smoke was getting darker, thicker, filling my lungs with every breath. My eyes were watering. My throat was burning. We stumbled down the stairs, staying low, coughing and choking. The heat was intense. I could feel it radiating off the walls, off the floor, like we were inside an oven. The kitchen was completely engulfed. Flames covered the walls, the ceiling spreading to the living room. Our couch was on fire. The curtains were burning. Everything was orange and black and terrifying. We made it to the front door, and burst outside into the freezing night air. It was November, maybe 40 degrees, and we were in our pajamas, barefoot on the cold grass. Neighbors were coming out of their houses, staring at the flames that were now visible through every downstairs window. We stood on the freezing lawn, watching our entire house burn, watching everything we owned, every memory, every possession going up in smoke. Mom was crying, holding Buster tight. Dad was on neighbor's phone, talking to 911, his voice shaking. I pulled out my phone and saw that Emma was still on the call, her face frozen in horror. "Marcus, oh my God, are you okay?" "We're out," I said, my voice hoarse from the smoke. "We're safe." "I'm coming over," she said immediately. "I'm getting my mom to drive me right now." Firefighters arrived within 10 minutes, their sirens wailing through the quiet suburban neighborhood. They hooked up their hoses and started spraying water, but the fire had already consumed half the house. The kitchen was destroyed. The living room was gone. Parts of the second floor had collapsed. The fire chief, a tall man with a thick mustache, came over to talk to us after they'd gotten the fire mostly under control. Smoke was still pouring from the windows, but the flames were out. "You folks are incredibly lucky," he said, shaking his head. "Another 10 minutes, and you wouldn't have made it out. Can you tell me why your smoke detectors didn't go off?" Dad's face went pale. He couldn't meet the fire chief's eyes because he knew the answer. He'd been meaning to replace the batteries for months. Every time the detector chirped its low battery warning, he'd just take the battery out completely, planning to replace it later. But later never came. I forgot to change the batteries," Dad admitted quietly, his voice filled with shame. The fire chief's expression hardened. "Sir, that's incredibly dangerous. Smoke detectors save lives. You're very fortunate your son woke up when he did." They asked me how I'd noticed the fire. I hesitated, looking at my parents, knowing I was about to confess to breaking their rules. But in that moment, standing on our lawn watching our house smolder, the rules seemed so incredibly stupid and pointless. "I was awake," I said simply, on a video call with my girlfriend. I smelled the smoke. Mom and Dad looked at each other. I expected anger, expected them to yell at me, even now, even after everything. But instead, Mom just started crying harder and pulled me into a tight hug. "Thank God," she whispered. "Thank God you were awake." The fire investigator determined later that it started from a faulty wire in the kitchen outlet. An electrical fire that had been smoldering in the walls for who knows how long before finally breaking through. If I'd been asleep like I was supposed to be, like my parents had insisted I be, none of us would have woken up in time. We were minutes away from being trapped inside. And if I hadn't been awake on that forbidden phone call, breaking the rules my parents had set, none of us would have made it out alive. We stayed with my aunt for the next 2 months while the house was being repaired. Dad was different after that night. Quieter, more thoughtful. He'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, and I'd find him sitting in the living room, just staring at nothing. 1 week after the fire, Dad took me to the phone store. We walked in together, and he told the salesperson, "I need to get my son a new phone, the best one you have, with unlimited data." The salesperson started showing us options, talking about different plans, but Dad cut him off. "Unlimited. Everything. No restrictions. Whatever he needs." In the car on the way home, Dad was quiet for a long time. Then he finally spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "Your mom and I, we thought we were protecting you. We thought we were teaching you responsibility, but we were just being controlling. We were so worried about you making mistakes that we almost got us all killed." "Dad, you couldn't have known. The smoke detectors, Marcus," he interrupted. "I ignored them because I was too cheap, too lazy to buy new batteries. I was so focused on controlling your behavior that I couldn't even handle basic safety in my own house. What kind of parent does that make me?" "You're a good dad," I said quietly. He shook his head. "A good dad trusts his son. A good dad listens. You're 16 years old. You're not a child anymore. And I need to start treating you like the young man you're becoming." When we got home, he handed me the new phone. "No restrictions," he said. "No get a few. We trust you to make good decisions. And if you make bad ones, well, that's how you learn. That's how everyone learns." Mom was harder to convince. She still worried, still wanted to set rules, still pulled up articles about teenage sleep and screen time. But Dad would gently remind her about that night, about how my irresponsible behavior had saved our lives. Eventually, she came around. She apologized to me one night, sitting on the edge of my bed like she used to when I was little. "I was so scared of losing you," she admitted. "Scared you'd grow up too fast, make mistakes, get hurt. But I almost lost you anyway, trying to protect you from things that didn't matter. I am sorry, sweetie." Emma and I are still together. We still have our late night calls, but now they're not secret. Sometimes Mom even pops her head in to say hi to Emma, to ask how she's doing, to tell her goodnight. It's weird, but it's also kind of nice. The house took 6 months to fully repair. When we finally moved back in, the first thing Dad did was install new smoke detectors in every room. The kind with 10-year batteries that you can't ignore. He tested them obsessively every single week, making sure they work. Sometimes I think about that night, about how close we came, about how a stupid rule, A forbidden phone call and a cracked iPhone saved my entire family. About how the thing my parents thought was dangerous was actually the thing that saved us. I learned something important that night. Rules are important, sure, but blind adherence to rules without thought or flexibility, can be just as dangerous as having no rules at all. My parents learned it too. They learned that trust is more important than control. That sometimes the things we fear are protecting us from imaginary dangers while real dangers go unnoticed. I still have that old cracked iPhone. It doesn't work anymore. The battery finally died completely, but I keep it in my desk drawer. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, remembering that night, remembering Emma's pixelated face on that damaged screen, remembering the smell of smoke and the sound of my parents' bedroom door opening and the feeling of cold grass under my bare feet. That phone saved my life. That forbidden conversation saved my family. And every time my parents try to set a rule now, they pause and ask themselves if it's really necessary, if it's really protecting me, or if it's just control masquerading as care. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe for more.